Another thing in verse 15, the shepherds searched Bethlehem. So it was when the angels went away, the shepherds said to one another, let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass. Did you know that they had to look? They had to go from house to house and talk to every person they met and say, have any of you, did you hear the sound of a baby? Have you seen a young couple? Have you seen a baby in a feeding trough for animals? Did any of you see this? No. Knocked again. They searched until they found Christ in Bethlehem. When people hear what God does, it's astounding. At verse 17, when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying that was told them. In verse 18, and everyone who heard it marveled. The word is thaumazo. It's a chosen word. It's the fact that God is awesome and amazing. Did you know that our lives, what we find in Christ, in fact, I just spent 18 months meeting with 10 groups of men, and we went through the 52 greatest chapters of the Bible, and all those men signed up to be in this. And they said, what are the requirements? So the requirements is you read the Bible every day, and you write down after you read the Bible what you found, and then you write an application to your own personal life from what you find every day. You write it down as a prayer for yourself. Oh boy, all of them can read the Bible. All of them could find truth. None of them could apply it themselves. It was always a good verse for their wife, or a good verse for their kids, or their coworkers, or those bad people at church, or their neighbor. But almost none of them could point the mirror to examine themselves and say, what I see, God, I want you to change. And so it was a wonderful year and a half, because after about 6 weeks, all of them got so good at it. And at the 6-week mark, I had them read out loud their application prayer. And you know what it did? It did what verse 19 says. Or verse 18, it says, and all those who heard it marveled. Do you know what happened around the table at Panera and Chipotle and Starbucks where we met? The little group of men were amazed that all of them struggled with the same things, and God could transform anyone at the table. See, that's what church is supposed to be about. Church is not to be wowed by the incredible musical group and orchestra and those big singers and how loud it is and everything else. It's supposed to be a place where people come and share that God is at work in my life. Recently at Calvary for Easter, we passed out packets to everybody. We passed out 6,000, I think, to everybody that lives around our church. And our people passed them out. And I said, we're going to do this as a church. And so I said, what we're going to do is we're going to pass them out in the communion trays, and we're all going to take them as a sacred vow to the Lord that we're going to take this packet and pass it out. Well, I had a woman write me. In fact, I just heard from her again on Facebook. She said, I'm the woman that got mad at you. I said, I remember you. And she said, you coerced me because it was communion, and that packet came by, and if I didn't take it, I would look like I wasn't a Christian. And if I did take it, that meant I had to give it out. So she said, you coerced me. And they even had to stand up as this happened, so no one could hide down here, And so the tray came by, and she took the packet, went like this, and she was just mad. But she took it. And she put it by the door, and she said, I'm not going to, at home, by her house door, she said, I'm not going to give that out. He coerced me to do it. But every day she walked by it, it made her feel bad. And the Spirit of God began working on her heart. And so finally, she stood next to that packet after a week, put her hand on it, and said, God, help me give this out. And the instant she put her hand on that little gospel tract, Gospel of John in a gospel tract, there was a knock on her door. She thought, well, that's neat. Touch that, and someone knocks. It's kind of like, do it again. Let's see if it happens. And so she grabbed it and went to the door and opened the door, and there was the USPS postman standing there with a pile of mail this big. He said, here, ma'am, brought you your mail. Didn't fit in the box. Handed it to her. She went, wow. She told me, she said, I've never had any postman come to my door, ever. She said, it's amazing. So she took all that mail. She never got that much mail in her life. She took it, walked in, set it down, and he left. She shut the door, and she looked down, and it wasn't her mail. You see, she had purposed to share the tract with her next-door neighbor that she'd never met in 21 years. She'd never met her neighbor. She moved in, saw her, wanted to go see her, but days became weeks, became months. Then she became embarrassed that she never went over there. And so she had never seen her in over 20 years, personally. And she had said, Lord, I want to go next door. And as soon as she said that, the postman brought that woman her neighbor's mail. This much. So she put the track on top of it, walked next door, and as she was walking up the sidewalk to the door opened. The neighbor leaned out and said, I am so sorry I've never come over to meet you for 21 years. And these two women met after 21 years, and she shared her mail and said, but the real reason I'm coming is this gospel packet because I have always wanted to share my hope in Christ with you, and I am so sorry it's taken me 21 years to do it. Did you know that's what we share and amaze one another at what God is doing in our lives? That's what church is supposed to be about. Not showing off your clothes and your hairdo and your suntan and your new car and, your new phone and everything else. It's to come to be amazed because when people hear what God does, it's awesome.